Hello, dear learners. This is Teacher Vicky from English Champ. And for our part in the workshop, you will be exploring how to write for comics. This video is to prepare you for our writing session and to make sure you know the basics needed to do a great writing job. Let's go. When you read comics, you will find words in boxes, speech or thought bubbles, or sometimes even action bubbles. When I think of the word comics, some very popular ones come to mind. In some instances, dialogues take place in speech bubbles. When someone is reading a message, for example, there would be some words displayed in the image of a phone or some gadget, alongside thought bubbles, as one might usually be thinking instead of talking to himself or herself when reading messages. Some comics could have very few words, but you still know what is happening. They could even be making sound effects with words. That's called onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia are words for sounds, also to help reader understand what is happening. The yellow or black boxes are ways how a storyline can be told in a comic strip. Not many words are used, but they are powerful enough to paint a clear picture of what is happening. Today, we will be talking about 3 main topics in this video. These are important things you should know about before getting your comic stories going. Number 1, punctuating dialogue. Number 2, cliffhangers. Number 3, story mountain. Here we go. Punctuating dialogue. When we are talking, we sometimes pause, stop, exclaim about things when we feel emotional, or ask questions. When we write dialogues, we need to add some markings called punctuation to show the differences in our speech. Here are some important punctuation marks that you would need when you are writing a dialogue or for a comic strip. Commas. We use commas when we are taking a pause in the middle of a sentence or when we are making a list of things. Full stops. A full stop is used when the sentence has ended. When we talk about different things, we usually use different sentences. Exclamation marks. We usually use exclamation marks when we are talking with strong feelings of excitement or anger, or when we are trying to emphasize something. For example, I am so hungry. Stop that. I love strawberries. Question marks. Question marks are used when the person talking is asking a question. This also shows readers who are reading aloud that they need to raise the pitch of their voice when reading a question. Here's an example question. Do you really want to go there? Do you notice that there is read with a higher pitch? Otherwise, you would sound like this. Do you want to go there? Reading there in a flat tone would confuse the person you're talking to. The raised pitch is like a cue that the other person wants us to answer a question. Quotation marks. These are used in stories to show that someone is talking. Capital letters and small letters. When you are starting a new sentence or when it is a proper noun or a name, you need to use capital letters. You also need to remember when a new speaker is speaking, you need to start a new paragraph. Let's learn more from this video.
Learning Upgrade. Use quotation marks around direct speech, the actual words of the speaker. Sarah said, "Meet me after school." If the quote is a complete sentence, capitalize the first word. Place a comma before the first quotation mark. If the quote comes at the start of a sentence, place a comma before the second quotation mark. "Meet me after school," said Sarah. If the quote contains a question mark or an exclamation point, don't add a comma. "Come here now," said Anna. A sentence that has no actual spoken words does not need quotation marks. Sarah said that we should wait for her. Use quotation marks around direct speech, the actual words of the speaker. Sarah said, "Meet me after school."
So, are you ready to write dialogues for your comic story with proper punctuation? Do you see any quotation marks in the speech bubbles? Make sure you remember they're not certain there. Punctuation marks because we do not need them when writing in speech bubbles. If the dialogue is in a speech bubble. Cliffhanger. If you're wondering what cliffhangers are, don't worry, we've got you covered. But before we proceed, let's check this video out.
Flying off the shelf once again, it's the continuing daring and dangling adventures of Cliffhanger! Today's episode, Cliffhanger and the Bed.
Cliffhanger, hanging from a cliff, and that's why he's called Cliffhanger.
Excuse me! Excuse me!
We find Cliffhanger where we left him last, hanging from a cliff.
Can't hold on much longer.
Suddenly below him, Cliff sees two movers carrying a large Ed.
An Ed? What is an Ed?
Deftly, Cliff delves into his backpack and extracts his trusty survival manual. Using his expert decoding skills, Cliff begins to read.
Earache, easel, here it is, Ed. When you see an Ed, find the letter B, then drop it. Ed, bed. I get it, it's a bed.
Has intrepid Cliffhanger made his escape at last?
This is as easy as falling out of bed. Uh-oh.
And that's why he's called Cliffhanger.
Can't hold on much longer.
The character in the story is Mr. Cliffhanger. Why do you think he's called that? Do you notice that the story has no proper ending? No, and he lived happily ever after. Not all stories should end with everyone living happily ever after. Sometimes stories are exciting to read when they have no ending. What? No ending? Some people go crazy wanting to know what will happen after that. And if you plan to have another story after that, or another comic strip, they probably can't wait to read that because of your cliffhanger. Cliffhangers add suspense to your story and sets it apart from just another story out there. A cliffhanger usually happens when the story ends very suddenly after a big dramatic action happens. Like a group of heroes going home after solving a big case, but an explosion happens. That makes you wonder, are they all right? Did they die? Who did that? And that cliffhanger will make you demand a continuation to this story. Story Mountain. When you read a story or watch a movie, you might notice that there is a pattern to how the story unfolds. The story usually starts with an introduction of characters, followed by something that happens that changes things. This is called the build-up to the story. You can usually see the characters facing their problems and trying to find ways to settle them at the peak of this story. And somehow, they find ways to make things better. This part is called the resolution. It's also a way to bring the story to its ending. Like real mountains out there, different stories have story mountains that look different. Some have rather steep build-ups and resolutions that drag on longer. Some may even have multiple peaks. We hope you learned something in this video, and we'll see you in December to write your very own story during our writing workshop. Till then, keep safe and take care. Bye!